Friday morning arrived with intention that seemed to electrify the air around the base. Sarah reported for what everyone hoped would be the final shift of the most important gate duty assignment in military history. Hidden throughout the area, Special Forces teams waited in positions that had been carefully planned to provide maximum coverage while remaining invisible to approaching threats. Sarah went through her normal preparation routine, checking equipment and reviewing overnight reports, but her awareness was heightened beyond anything she had experienced. Every vehicle that appeared in the distance, every person walking toward the gate, every radio transmission could signal the beginning of the operation that would determine whether months of planning would succeed or fail. The morning passed with routine traffic that felt almost surreal given the circumstances. Delivery trucks, contractors, and military personnel moved through her checkpoint exactly as they had for weeks, unaware that they were part of an elaborate security operation. Sarah processed each entry with her usual thoroughness while maintaining constant communication with the hidden command post, monitoring her every move. At exactly 11:37, a convoy of 4 vehicles approached from the main access road. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the formation pattern from her intelligence briefings. This wasn't random traffic. It was the beginning of the enemy's final operation. The lead vehicle carried diplomatic plates and official documentation that appeared legitimate at first glance. The driver presented credentials identifying the passengers as cultural attachés, visiting for a routine inspection of base facilities. Their paperwork was sophisticated and would have passed most security screenings, but Sarah's trained eye immediately spotted several discrepancies. The photographs on the identification cards were slightly off, showing signs of digital manipulation that most guards wouldn't notice. More importantly, the visitors displayed none of the nervous uncertainty that genuine diplomats typically showed when entering military installations. Their calm confidence suggested people comfortable with military environments, not civilian officials on an unfamiliar visit. Sarah began her extended verification process while maintaining normal conversation with the group. Through her hidden communication device, she signaled the command post that the operation had begun. Around the perimeter, Special Forces teams began moving into their final positions while maintaining their concealment. "Gentlemen, I'll need to conduct additional screening for your group," Sarah announced, following the predetermined script that would give response teams time to complete their preparations. The reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of the mild annoyance that legitimate visitors might show, the lead passenger displayed the controlled tension of someone whose carefully planned operation was being delayed. He began asking questions about how long the process would take and whether there was a supervisor he could speak with to expedite their entry. Sarah continued her verification calls while observing the group's behavior. Through her peripheral vision, she noticed that the passengers in the rear vehicles were scanning the area with the systematic attention of trained operatives looking for security threats. They were clearly professionals conducting surveillance even while trying to maintain their diplomatic cover. The verification process revealed what everyone had expected. While the diplomatic mission they claimed to represent was real, it had no record of sending anyone to the base that day. The credentials, though sophisticated, were elaborate forgeries created specifically for this operation. When Sarah announced that she would need to detain the group for additional screening, everything changed instantly. The calm diplomats became armed operatives in a matter of seconds, drawing weapons and taking cover behind their vehicles. But they had walked directly into the trap that had been prepared for them. Special Forces teams emerged from concealment with overwhelming firepower and tactical superiority. The enemy operatives found themselves surrounded by forces they hadn't detected, their carefully planned approach turning into a hopeless tactical situation. The operation that was supposed to eliminate Sarah and cripple base security had become their own destruction. The firefight was brief but intense. The enemy fought with professional skill, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by defenders who had chosen the time and place of the engagement. Within minutes, the threat that had been developing for months was eliminated completely. As the area was secured and the suspects taken into custody, Sarah remained at her post completing the incident reports with the same attention to detail that had characterized her entire assignment. She had become the central figure in an operation that would be studied and analyzed for years to come. Captain Rodriguez was the first to reach her position as the all-clear was given. "Outstanding work, Martinez," he said with unmistakable pride. This operation will be remembered as a textbook example of how individual excellence can change the course of much larger events. But the real surprise came an hour later when a convoy of official vehicles arrived carrying personnel whose rank insignia indicated the highest levels of military command. Among them was a figure whose presence on the base was completely unexpected, a SEAL commander whose reputation was legendary throughout the military. As Sarah stood at attention, wondering why such high-ranking officers would visit her gate station, the commander approached with an expression of serious respect. Without saying a word, he came to attention and rendered a crisp salute that acknowledged not just her rank, but her achievement. "Sergeant Martinez," he said formally, "on behalf of the Joint Military Command, I want to thank you for exceptional service that has protected military installations and personnel across multiple allied nations." The salute from one of the most respected commanders in the military was recognition beyond anything Sarah had ever imagined possible. The assignment that had begun as what seemed like a joke or punishment had become the foundation for one of the most successful counterintelligence operations in recent history. As Sarah returned the salute, she realized that her journey from overlooked soldier to critical security asset had taught her something invaluable about the nature of military service. Excellence wasn't about the importance of the assignment. It was about bringing complete dedication and skill to whatever role you were given. The gate duty that had initially seemed like a dead end had become the most important assignment of her career, proving that in military service, as in life, you never knew when your moment to make a real difference would come. The key was being ready when it did. Sarah walked into the command center with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. She had never been in this part of the base before, and the level of activity was far beyond anything she had imagined. Multiple screens displayed satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and tactical maps that painted a picture of operations spanning far beyond their single base. Seated around a large conference table were officers whose rank insignia indicated levels of authority she had only heard about in training. At the head of the table sat a woman whose bearing immediately commanded attention, even though Sarah couldn't see her rank clearly from the angle of her approach. Captain Rodriguez guided her to a chair and made brief introductions, but Sarah found herself focusing on the tactical displays rather than the names and titles being mentioned. The screens showed a network of connected incidents across multiple military installations, and she began to understand that what they had been experiencing was part of a much larger coordinated operation. "Sergeant Martinez," the commanding officer began, and Sarah snapped to attention. "Your performance over the past month has been exceptional. What started as routine gate duty has evolved into one of our most critical security operations." The briefing that followed was unlike anything Sarah had expected. The enemy network they had been fighting was part of an international operation, targeting military communications and intelligence gathering capabilities across multiple allied nations. The attempts to penetrate their base had been just one component of a sophisticated campaign designed to compromise military readiness on a global scale. "Your unique ability to detect threats that others miss has given us insights into their operational methods," the commander continued. "We've been able to share your techniques with security personnel at other facilities, and similar successes are being reported." Sarah felt a surge of pride, but also a growing sense of responsibility. Her individual actions at a single gate had apparently contributed to a larger defensive effort that she was only beginning to understand. However, the commander's tone became more serious. "Intelligence indicates that they're planning a final major operation, something that would require eliminating the security improvements you've helped implement." The tactical officer activated a new display showing recent intelligence intercepts. Enemy communications suggested they were planning to target her specifically, not just as a security obstacle, but as a symbol of their operational failures. They had apparently identified her as a key factor in their repeated defeats and wanted to demonstrate that they could neutralize any defensive measures. "We have two options," the commander explained. "We can remove you from gate duty and assign you to a secure location until this operation concludes, or we can use their focus on you as an opportunity to draw them into a trap." Sarah understood immediately what the second option meant. She would essentially become bait, continuing her gate duties while serving as the focal point for a counter-operation designed to capture or eliminate the entire enemy network. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential to end the threat permanently. What would the operation involve? She asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. The intelligence officer took over the briefing, outlining a complex plan that would use Sarah's position to attract the enemy, while surrounding them with hidden defensive measures. Special forces teams would be positioned throughout the area. Advanced surveillance equipment would monitor every approach to the gate, and rapid response protocols would be implemented to neutralize threats before they could reach her. The goal is to make them believe they have an opportunity, to eliminate what they see as their primary obstacle, he explained. Their desperation to succeed has made them predictable, and we intend to use that against them. Sarah listened to the details with growing understanding of both the opportunity and the danger. She would be continuing her normal duties while serving as the center of an elaborate military operation designed to end a threat that had been developing for months. I need to know that you understand the risks, the commander said directly. This isn't a typical military assignment. If something goes wrong, you could be in serious danger before backup can reach you. But Sarah had already made her decision. The past month had shown her capabilities she hadn't known she possessed, and had given her a sense of purpose that went far beyond anything she had experienced in her previous assignments. The opportunity to play a decisive role in protecting not just her own base but military installations around the world was too important to pass up. I'll do it, she said simply. When do we begin? The commander smiled for the first time during the briefing. The operation is already in motion. Intelligence suggests they'll make their move within the next few days. You'll return to your normal gate duties, but with the knowledge that every resource we have will be focused on ensuring your safety and the success of this mission. As Sarah prepared to leave the command center, she realized that her journey from routine gate guard to central figure in an international security operation was about to reach its climax. Tomorrow she would return to the same gate where this all began, but with the weight of a much larger mission resting on her shoulders. The woman who had felt punished and overlooked just a month ago was now being trusted with one of the most critical operations the base had ever conducted. The joke assignment had become the opportunity of a lifetime, and Sarah was determined to prove worthy of the faith being placed in her abilities. The fourth week brought an unexpected escalation that tested Sarah's resolve and skills beyond anything she had experienced. The enemy network, apparently frustrated by their repeated failures to penetrate base security, had decided to take a more direct and dangerous approach. Intelligence reports suggested they were planning a major operation that would require neutralizing the gate security measures that had proven so effective. Sarah arrived for her Monday morning shift to find additional security personnel positioned around her gate station. Snipers had taken positions on nearby buildings, and plainclothes agents were stationed throughout the area disguised as maintenance workers and civilian contractors. The increased security was both reassuring and ominous, confirming that the threat against her personally had become serious enough to warrant extraordinary measures. Captain Rodriguez briefed her on the new protocols. We have reliable intelligence that they're planning something significant, he said. Your position has become so critical to base security that they can't proceed with their larger operation until they find a way past you. The pressure was intense, but Sarah found herself energized rather than intimidated by the challenge. Every person who approached her gate now represented a potential threat that required careful evaluation. She had developed an almost intuitive ability to read people's intentions through their body language, voice patterns, and the subtle inconsistencies in their stories. Tuesday brought the first test of the new security arrangements. A group of supposed journalists arrived claiming to have appointments for interviews with base personnel. Their credentials appeared legitimate, and their press passes had been verified through official channels. But something about their behavior raised Sarah's suspicions. The leader of the group was too knowledgeable about military procedures for a civilian reporter. He used terminology and displayed an understanding of base operations that suggested military background. When Sarah asked about their previous work, their answers were vague and avoided specific details about stories they claimed to have covered. More concerning was their equipment. While they carried cameras and recording devices appropriate for journalists, Sarah noticed they also had electronic devices that seemed more sophisticated than necessary for news gathering. Her training in electronic warfare, Recognition suggested some of these items might be surveillance or communication equipment. Sarah initiated a thorough background check while engaging the group in conversation designed to reveal inconsistencies in their cover story. Within minutes, the verification process revealed that while the news organization they claimed to represent was real, it had no record of sending a team to the base that day. The press passes, though convincing, were sophisticated forgeries. The confrontation that followed was more subtle than previous incidents. Rather than attempting to flee or fight, the fake journalists tried to talk their way through the situation. They claimed there had been a miscommunication with their editor and offered to call their office to clear up the confusion. Their calm professionalism was almost convincing, but Sarah had learned to trust her instincts over smooth explanations. Security personnel moved in to detain the group, but during the arrest process, one of the suspects managed to activate a hidden communication device. Within seconds, Sarah realized this had been a coordinated operation with multiple components. The fake journalists were just one part of a larger plan that was now being implemented. Alarms began sounding throughout the base as other security stations reported simultaneous incidents. A delivery truck at the north gate was attempting to ram through the barriers, while suspicious individuals had been spotted near the perimeter fence in 2 different locations. The enemy had apparently decided to create multiple distractions while executing their primary objective. Sarah found herself at the center of a complex security crisis that was unfolding across the entire base. Her gate position gave her a unique vantage point to coordinate information between different security teams, and her detailed knowledge of normal base traffic patterns helped identify which incidents were genuine threats versus diversionary tactics. Through her communications equipment, she could hear reports from across the facility. Security teams were responding to multiple breaches, but they were having difficulty determining which threats were real and which were intended to spread defensive resources too thin. Sarah realized that her experience in threat assessment could be crucial in helping command personnel prioritize their responses. She began analyzing the pattern of attacks, looking for the strategic thinking behind the enemy's approach. The timing and locations of the various incidents suggested they were trying to draw security personnel away from a specific area of the base. By mapping the distraction points against the facility layout, Sarah identified the likely target of their real operation. "Command, this is Gate 1, she reported through her radio. "The pattern suggests they're trying to clear security from the communications center. Recommend focusing primary response on that sector." Her analysis proved correct. Within minutes, security teams discovered an infiltration attempt at the communications facility that would have gone undetected if defenses had been drawn away to respond to the diversionary attacks. The enemy operation was thwarted, but just barely. The aftermath of the incident brought unexpected recognition for Sarah's role in preventing what could have been a catastrophic security breach. Her ability to see the bigger picture and identify the strategic pattern behind the enemy's tactics had proven as valuable as her skill in detecting individual threats at the gate. Captain Rodriguez arrived at her station as the all-clear was sounded. "Martinez, your analysis may have saved this entire operation," he said. "Command wants to see you immediately." As Sarah prepared to meet with the base leadership, she realized that her journey from routine gate duty to critical security asset was about to take another unexpected turn. The commanders who had initially assigned her to this position as what seemed like a joke or punishment were about to discover just how valuable their decision had proven to be. The 3rd week brought an intensity to Sarah's gate duty that she hadn't expected. Word of her successful detection of the security threat had spread through the base, but instead of celebration, she noticed an increase in tension among the command staff. Conversations stopped when she walked by, and she caught glimpses of urgent meetings being conducted behind closed doors. Captain Rodriguez visited her station more frequently, usually with brief updates that revealed little, but suggested much. "Stay alert, Martinez," he would say. "Intelligence suggests the operation you disrupted was part of something bigger." Sarah took his warning seriously, approaching each shift with heightened awareness. Her routine inspections became even more thorough, and she began noting patterns in visitor schedules that might indicate coordinated surveillance efforts. She created a mental map of normal base traffic patterns, making it easier to spot anything that deviated from the usual flow. On Wednesday morning, her vigilance paid off again. A woman approached the gate on foot, claiming to be a new civilian contractor reporting for her first day of work. Her documentation appeared legitimate and her story was plausible, but something about her demeanor raised red flags in Sarah's mind. The woman was too calm, too prepared for every question. Most new contractors showed at least some nervousness when entering a military facility for the first time, but this woman displayed the confidence of someone familiar with military procedures. Her clothes were appropriate but looked too new, as if purchased specifically for this role rather than worn through actual work experience. More importantly, when Sarah asked casual questions about her supposed employer, the woman's answers were technically correct but lacked the kind of personal details that someone who actually worked for the company would naturally include. She knew the company's address and contact information but couldn't mention any co-workers by name or describe the office layout in the way someone familiar with the workplace would. Sarah made the decision to conduct an extended verification process, calling the company directly to confirm the woman's employment. During the phone call, she learned that while the company did have contracts with the base, they had no record of sending a new employee that day. The personnel department was surprised to hear about someone claiming to represent their organization. The woman's reaction to this news was telling. Instead of confusion or concern that a legitimate employee might show, she displayed the controlled calm of someone whose cover story had been exposed. She began asking questions about how long the verification process would take and whether there was a supervisor she could speak with to expedite her entry. Sarah activated her alert system while maintaining a professional conversation with the woman. Security personnel arrived within minutes, but the suspect had already begun backing away from the gate, clearly preparing to flee. She was detained before she could leave the area, and a search revealed sophisticated communication, equipment, and detailed photographs of base personnel that had obviously been taken from outside the facility. The investigation that followed revealed that the woman was part of the same network responsible for the earlier convoy incident. She had been sent to gather intelligence about security procedures and personnel schedules, information that would have been used to plan a more sophisticated attack on the base. But the most disturbing discovery came when investigators examined the photographs found in her possession. Among the images were detailed shots of Sarah herself, taken during her gate duty shifts from various angles and distances. Someone had been studying her routines and behavior patterns, possibly planning to neutralize her ability to detect future threats. This revelation changed everything for Sarah. She was no longer just a guard watching for random security threats. She had become a specific target for an organized enemy operation. The implications were both frightening and oddly validating. Her skills had proven so effective that hostile forces were now working to counter her specifically. Captain Rodriguez briefed her on the situation that evening, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. "Martinez, you've become a key asset in this security operation," he explained. "Your ability to spot these threats has disrupted their plans significantly. But that also means you're now a priority target for them." The captain went on to explain that intelligence agencies had been tracking this network for months without success. The group had previously managed to conduct surveillance and even minor infiltrations of other military facilities without being detected. Sarah's unique combination of training and natural, observational skills had given security forces their first real advantage in the ongoing operation. "We're implementing additional security measures around your position," Rodriguez continued. "But we need you to remain at the gate. Your presence there has become our most effective defense against their operations." Sarah felt a mix of pride and apprehension. She'd always wanted to make a real difference in her military service, but she hadn't expected that difference to come in the form of gate duty. The routine assignment that had initially felt like a punishment or joke had become one of the most critical security positions on the entire base. As she prepared for her next shift, Sarah reflected on how much her understanding of her role had changed. What had started as simple identification checks had evolved into complex threat assessment and strategic defense. She was no longer just following procedures. She was actively hunting for enemies who were specifically trying to outsmart her. The game had become personal, and Sarah was determined to prove that her opponents had seriously underestimated both her abilities and her dedication. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready for whatever came next. She had found her true calling in the most unexpected place, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it away from her. The second week of gate duty brought unexpected challenges that tested every skill Sarah had learned in her military training. What had started as routine security checks was becoming something much more complex and dangerous. She began to notice patterns in the people and vehicles passing through her checkpoint that made her increasingly suspicious. On Tuesday morning, a maintenance truck arrived with proper credentials, but something felt wrong. The driver seemed nervous, sweating despite the cool morning air, and kept glancing at his mirrors as if expecting to be followed. When Sarah asked routine questions about his work order, his answers were vague and inconsistent. Her instincts, honed through years of training, told her to dig deeper. She performed a more thorough inspection than usual, checking the truck's contents against the manifest. Hidden beneath some legitimate repair equipment, she found electronics that didn't match anything on the work order. The components looked like surveillance equipment, expensive and sophisticated. When she questioned the driver about these items, he became even more agitated and claimed they were backup parts for communication systems. Sarah made the decision to detain the vehicle and contact her supervisor. Within minutes, security personnel arrived to take over the situation. The driver was escorted away for questioning, and the truck was impounded for a complete search. Later that day, Captain Rodriguez appeared at her gate station with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Good work, Martinez," he said simply. "That equipment you found was stolen from a classified project. The driver was part of a larger operation we've been tracking." The pieces began falling into place for Sarah. Her assignment to gate duty wasn't random or punitive. Someone had recognized her ability to spot details others missed, and had positioned her at the most important entry point to the base. She was being used as a human early warning system, and it was working. Over the following days, Sarah's confidence grew along with her understanding of her true role. She began keeping detailed notes about every person and vehicle that raised even minor suspicions. A civilian contractor who visited too frequently, a delivery driver who seemed overly interested in base layout, government officials whose credentials checked out, but whose behavior seemed off. Her breakthrough came on Friday afternoon, when a convoy of 3 black SUVs approached her gate. The vehicles had proper documentation, and the occupants were all cleared for entry. But something about the formation struck her as unusual. Military convoys followed specific protocols, but these vehicles were positioned more like a protective detail escorting someone important. The lead vehicle's driver handed her a stack of credentials, and Sarah began her inspection. As she processed each ID, she noticed that while all the men appeared to be military personnel, their uniforms bore no visible rank insignia. This was highly unusual for a routine base visit. Most telling of all, the passengers in the middle vehicle kept their windows up and faces turned away, despite regulations requiring visual identification of all personnel. Sarah's training had taught her that the most dangerous security breaches often came disguised as routine operations. She made the decision to request additional verification for the convoy, citing standard security protocols. The response from the lead vehicle was immediate and aggressive. "Soldier, these are classified personnel on urgent business," the driver snapped. "Process us through immediately." But Sarah had learned to trust her instincts. The more pressure someone applied to rush through security, the more carefully she examined their credentials. She noticed that one of the ID cards had a photograph that didn't quite match the person carrying it. The hair color was different, and the facial structure seemed wrong in subtle ways that might fool a casual observer, but not someone trained to look for such details. "Sir, I need to verify this identification," she said calmly, holding up the suspicious card. "Please step out of the vehicle for additional screening." The reaction was explosive. 3 men immediately exited the vehicles, all moving with military precision but displaying an aggressive attitude that seemed wrong for legitimate personnel. Sarah realized she was facing a serious security threat, possibly the very operation that her superiors had positioned her to detect. She activated her emergency alert system while maintaining her calm, professional demeanor. Within seconds, alarms began sounding throughout the base and armed security teams started responding to her location. The men from the convoy realized their operation had been compromised and began reaching for weapons concealed beneath their uniforms. Sarah drew her sidearm and took cover behind her gate station, calling out orders for the suspects to surrender. Her voice remained steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Everything she had learned about crisis management and threat assessment came together in those crucial moments. The standoff lasted only minutes before backup arrived, but those minutes felt like hours. The suspects, realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned, attempted to flee but were quickly surrounded and captured. A search of their vehicles revealed weapons, surveillance equipment, and detailed plans of the base layout that could only have been obtained through insider knowledge. As the situation was secured and the suspects were taken into custody, Sarah remained at her post, completing the incident reports with the same careful attention to detail that had allowed her to spot the threat in the first place. She was beginning to understand that her role at the gate was part of a much larger security operation, and that her ability to notice what others missed had already proven invaluable. Captain Rodriguez arrived as the last suspect was being loaded into a transport vehicle. He looked at Sarah with unmistakable respect and something that might have been pride. "Outstanding work, Martinez," he said. "You may have prevented a major security breach today." But Sarah sensed that this incident was just the beginning. The real test of her abilities and the true purpose of her assignment were still to come. Sarah Martinez never expected her military career to take such a strange turn. At 25 years old, she had already proven herself as one of the most capable soldiers in her unit. Her sharp eyes could spot trouble from a mile away, and her quick thinking had saved her team more times than anyone could count. But today, as she stood at the main gate of the naval base, she wondered if all her hard work had been for nothing. The assignment came as a shock. Just 3 days ago, her commanding officer had called her into his office with what looked like barely contained amusement. Captain Rodriguez had always been fair to her, but lately she noticed some of the other officers whispering behind closed doors. When he told her about the gate duty assignment, his expression was unreadable. "Martinez, you're being reassigned to main gate security for the next month," he had said, sliding the paperwork across his desk. "Consider it a special assignment." Sarah had stared at the papers, confusion written all over her face. Gate duty was usually given to new recruits or soldiers who had messed up badly. It was considered the most boring job on the entire base. Guards stood for hours checking identification cards, waving through delivery trucks, and occasionally dealing with lost tourists who had taken a wrong turn. "Sir, may I ask why?" she had managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. Captain Rodriguez had shrugged, but she caught something in his eyes that looked almost like he was holding back laughter. "Orders from higher up. They want someone reliable at the gate." Walking out of that office, Sarah felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. Her fellow soldiers' reactions only made things worse. Some looked at her with pity, others with barely hidden smirks. Word traveled fast on a military base, and by dinner time, everyone seemed to know about her new assignment. Her best friend Jake had tried to cheer her up. "Maybe it's temporary," he said over their evening meal. "Maybe they just need someone they can trust for something important." But Sarah wasn't convinced. She had seen this pattern before. Soldiers who asked too many questions or stood out too much sometimes found themselves pushed to the sidelines. She wondered if her recent report about security weaknesses in the base perimeter had rubbed someone the wrong way. Now, standing at the gate in the early morning sun, Sarah adjusted her uniform and tried to maintain her dignity. The gate station was a small building with bulletproof windows and electronic security systems. Her job was simple: check every person and vehicle that wanted to enter the base, verify their credentials, and log their entry time. The first few hours were exactly as boring as she had expected. Delivery trucks carrying supplies, civilian contractors with proper clearance, and military personnel returning from leave all passed through her checkpoint. She performed each inspection with the same careful attention to detail that had made her reputation in her previous role. Around 10 in the morning, a black sedan with government plates approached her gate. The driver handed her credentials through the window, and Sarah began her routine check. The passenger in the back seat was reading a newspaper, his face hidden behind the pages. Something about the car felt different, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. As she processed the paperwork, Sarah noticed the driver's hands. They were scarred in a particular way that she recognized from her combat training manuals. These weren't ordinary desk job hands. The passenger's shoes, visible beneath the newspaper, were military-issue boots polished to perfection but showing signs of serious use. Her training kicked in automatically. Sarah had been taught to notice details that others might miss, and everything about this vehicle screamed high-level military operation. She completed her inspection thoroughly but efficiently, returning the credentials with a professional nod. The car drove through the gate, but something made Sarah watch it in her security mirror until it disappeared around the corner toward the command building. She made a note in her logbook, recording the time and license plate number with extra care. The rest of the morning passed without incident, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her boring gate duty assignment might be more important than anyone had told her. She began paying closer attention to every vehicle and person who passed through her checkpoint, looking for patterns and details that might mean something to someone higher up the chain of command. By lunchtime, she had processed dozens of routine entries, but her mind kept returning to the black sedan. There had been something about the way the passenger held himself, even while reading the newspaper, that suggested someone accustomed to command, and the driver's alert posture had reminded her of her own combat instructors. Sarah was beginning to suspect that her assignment to gate duty might not be the punishment or joke she had initially thought. Someone wanted her here, at this specific post, using the observation skills that had made her valuable in her previous role. The question was, what exactly was she supposed to be watching for? As she prepared for the afternoon shift, Sarah made a decision. She would approach this assignment with the same dedication and attention to detail that she brought to everything else. If someone thought she was important enough to place at this critical entry point, she would prove them right. Little did she know that her real test was still coming, and it would change everything she thought she knew about her place in the military hierarchy.